get it done. All right. 3 topics this week we want to play with. Let's look at the first one. On November 4th, is it the 3rd or the 4th? I don't know. The first weekend of November, Derrick Lewis will challenge Daniel Cormier for the UFC heavyweight title. Super awesome for many, many reasons. Now, bear in mind that I just love the matchups. I love the dynamics of the matchups. I love the meaning of the fights and stuff. Rankings and those things are not as interesting to me. I find them to be a mechanism, and I don't find them. They've appeared to me, you may disagree, but they've appeared to me to be meaningless for many years. So I've kind of disregarded them. So I just look at a fight between a man who cuts to 265 pounds and a man who is a light heavyweight champion. And in this hand is a man who was a light heavyweight champion, was also a heavyweight champion in another organization and this one, who is brilliantly skilled, a brilliant athlete and a brilliant sportsman and a brilliant martial artist and incredibly talented. In this side is a guy who in every single one of those categories scores lower, but is also probably 290 by fight time. And also is won his last fight in the final 11 seconds of a fight he was getting shit kicked. And I like that. I like that part of it. I really do. If you're just joining this segment, you didn't hear in the long-form podcast, I'd love it if you checked it out. But I'm always talking about trying to find ways to break through barriers and plateaus that we have. So I'm often looking at our own ways of examining things and looking for weaknesses in them. And one that I've often discussed and looked at, and I've tried to treat in my own disease of study, if that is a good analogy, and I don't think it is, but tried to treat it, is that we have a tendency to categorize things and then just compare those categories. And one of them being power, which we see by Derrick Lewis in that last fight. We see the flaws of just saying Derrick Lewis has incredible power. Now, according to the concept of Derrick Lewis has incredible power, when he hits a man late in round 3 or round 4, which he's done in the past, and is able to hurt them or drop them, then we go, well, see, he's got crazy power even when he's tired. But the issue is Derrick Lewis creates a lot of power, but the key element here is desire and commitment. Now, if I ask Derrick Lewis to throw a punch on a machine that measures a punch after I get him to exert the way he'd been exerting that night, it would not score in whatever meaningful way you measure pounds per square inch or whatever. That exhausted Derrick Lewis would not hit that hard. But Derrick Lewis with this almost inhuman desire and willingness and commitment to throwing that punch, that's the beauty. And so when I'm saying Derrick Lewis, how much power does he have, that being our weakness, not because I want to criticize how we look at things, or not because it's mainly because I want you to see what's really special about it. And it isn't some arbitrary score that he was born with. And it isn't something that he can do at any time. What mattered was in that moment, and when you watch it, you see it. He's exhausted. You ask him to fucking run up a flight of stairs, and he's tell you to go fuck yourself. My balls are tired. I'm not doing it. But when you see him, in the meaning of that moment, and he purposefully touched that guy's sternum and he could have done it with his eyes closed because it sort of would have been irrelevant. In the sense that when you just with that true, I would give my life to have this thing land. That's what mattered. That's the incredible thing about that moment. It's not, oh man, that guy's dangerous. That's not the things we say, just repeated, without our appreciation for their truth. Because the things we say are, guys like this is dangerous at any moment, even late in the fight. Yeah, not every day, not all the time. You know, what mattered, what made that so special was just, it is a lifetime, and he doesn't, by his own account, this may be misdirection, doesn't train at the level of many others, but through repetition, that's going to be one of his biggest punches. So that'll be one of the punches he's thrown most in his life. So his body's learned how to do it. And on many nights, it'll land, if you held pads or you measured it in some capacity, it would hit really hard. But when you desperately, every fiber of your brain and your body and your soul, if you subscribe to this concept, needs it to hit, you behave differently. And it's a reflection of that thing that we all say. It's like, there's only a minute left. Why don't they just go for it? Don't we say that every fight? Like, doesn't everybody say that every fight? Like, aren't we screaming that at the TV in those moments where the fight's almost ending?
Yeah, everyone does.
We're all screaming that.
Max Holloway, Ricardo Lamas.
Yeah, well, that one is just like,
you don't have that energy though.
Yeah, you don't have the energy, and you can't overcome your own body's fatigue, and like, you just can't.
The lactic acid builds up, like you're just physically unable to move.
So when he's talking about lactic acid and stuff, we just said there's a biochemical reason, physical biochemical challenge to overcome. Just general fatigue, which is also biological, it's biochemical, but it's also psychological. There's fear. There is resigning yourself to it. That's just thought. That's just brain activity. It's just electrical waves in your brain. You're like, I can't fucking do it. All of those things are all connected. If you weren't really sore, you might not think that. If your body didn't ache, you might believe you could do it. But all of those things make it fucking impossible to do what he did. And when I say impossible, it's like you take 1,000, you watch 1,000 fights just like that one, and that won't happen. That's uniquely special. It doesn't so much matter, not to him, not that day, doesn't so much matter who's stronger or faster, or has better cardio, or has better boxing, or is a better wrestler, who's got distance management skills. None of that shit matters to Derrick Lewis. And I'm not trying to say, although his personality tries to imply to us that he's a simple man, whatever. That may not be true. That might be a personality thing as well. But regardless, there's a decent chance that if I spoke to that gentleman about shit like distance management and lactic acid and stuff, he'd go, fuck yourself. I wanted to smash that guy, and I landed that punch. And that's real, and that matters. That really does matter. Now, does that mean that the way we look at range and, the biomechanics weren't at play? They were at play, but they weren't at play through examined through the lenses that were examining it. It was at play because that motherfucker wanted to hit that guy with everything he had. And that is, and you might hear me saying, I go, well, yeah, of course he did. But that's different than everybody else. Not that they didn't want to, but they couldn't make themselves do it. They weren't capable of it. When Mark, do you want to pull up his record? Yeah. He's got finishes in the third and fourth round before. And you've watched those. You've watched a lot of them. He's fucking tired. Tired people don't do that. Almost ever. And when I say almost ever, I mean, sure, 1 out of 100 and 1 out of 90 or 1 out of 210. That's not that few, statistically speaking, but it sure starts to feel pretty rare from a mathematical standpoint.
Yeah. Marcin Tybura.
Tybur's a third round finish?
Third round finish.
Yeah.
Shamil Abdurakhimov, fourth round finish. Split decision victory of Roy Nelson.
5 rounds? Yeah. 5 rounds?
That was 3 rounds.
3 rounds.
Yeah.
Is there I know he's got
lost to TKO by Marcon in the fourth round.
In the fourth round. Yeah. Listen, this isn't like, well, now if we looked at that without seeing anything or knowing anything, our brains might go, this guy's in great shape. But your eyes say that's not true. And I'm not just talking about his body type. You see those, this is desire, an inhuman level of desire. I mean, Mark, everything I'm saying here is making sense to you, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, the truth doesn't, the unadulterated facts are not lying to you.
And it's actually completely contrary to what people perceived of Lewis after the Ngannou fight.
Exactly.
Because they thought that he was being gunshot hesitant, write him off. They're
Yeah.
both done. Get him
Yeah.
out of the UFC.
Yep.
Now he's fighting for the
Now
title.
you see where he's at. It's like, so why did I take fucking 8-9 minutes to explain all that? And why did I repeat myself so many times? Because I really want you to see it. And I want you to attach yourself to it. Not hear a bunch of words and go, that's true, and then repeat them. I want you to imagine, like, to the point, the most exhausted you've ever been, and then you've got hit in the head with a baseball bat a few times, and you're still, doesn't really matter. Maybe you even, it could be worth 200 grand to you, or 60 grand if it's a double thing. But it wouldn't matter to you because you wouldn't be capable of it. I'm certainly not capable of it. And I shouldn't speak for you, but 99 out of 100 of us are not. I want you to imagine that. It's not like your babies in their, in a burning house. Most of you could do that. I believe in all of us that we can do that. This is sport. This is our bodies. And sometimes he said he shit his pants, and he's still doing shit like that. That's real. That's real, and it is exceptional. And I'm saying it because not because I want you to put a little check mark by, your imaginary list of Derrick Lewis's attributes. I want you to look at it and go, Derrick Lewis has a superhuman attribute, and that is desire, that is drive, that is commitment. Derrick Lewis has a superhuman attribute there, and that's important.
It's like that mentality where it's like, okay, the cage is locked. We're in here now. We got to make do.
Yeah.
Whereas some people can easily throw up an arm, give up, tap out mentally even.
So I'm gonna quickly. We're gonna talk in a separate section. You can find it on the YouTube channel, or if you're listening to the long form, we'll get to it in a bit, about Conor and Khabib. And people have asked, and people they're talking about every angle, which is something that we do when something is incredibly moving or compelling. But people ask about, did Conor quit? Or I don't even want to acknowledge that anybody wants to criticize Anthony Pettis. You sicken me. And I rarely say stuff like that to people. But please go look at yourself. If you look at what that wonderful young man and his wonderful coach did, and you got any desire to criticize their drive and courage, you got to look at yourself. That's wrong. That's dead wrong. There's not a lot of room there to discuss that. But Conor, did he quit? And you can see the moment where he can no longer handle turning back into Khabib and surrender. This man looks at fighting as military engagement or warfare, and that is one of many ways to look at it. And he doesn't look exclusively, and neither should you. And whatever your perspective is doesn't have to be your perspective forever. And in military warfare, if we had 100,000 guys and they had 100,000 guys, and they just stormed through something we couldn't protect, and we lost 40,000, the reason we surrender is to protect the other 60,000. And if we know it cannot be won, if we know, the thing is you never know. So surrender is to protect your other 60,000 people, or in the case of fighting, to protect your brain cells or your body or your future or the next fight. Surrender so we may fight again for another day. Those are all real. Again, it is your right as somebody who pays to consume these things and you're passionate and stuff to criticize. And I apologize if it's only my passion that makes me so rude when I think about somebody criticizing Anthony or Duke. And I apologize. I shouldn't be rude either. That's not cool. It's not for what I stand for or believe in. But it is your right to say that. But I mean, to surrender is to protect what you have remaining because you believe you cannot win. There are exceptions to that. Belief is belief is belief. If I believe I cannot win, well, then I cannot win. Therefore, I should surrender. Here's the thing. Derrick Lewis never believes that. Never. Right? Never. Conor McGregor or anybody else in a similar situation, I don't know who gives up and who doesn't. I don't know. Even when you tap, sometimes and anybody who's competed in any type of submission type of game, sometimes you tap when you feel the the ligaments going. Sometimes you tap just because you know you can't get out, and so we tap. And sometimes you don't tap in those, and you fucking take damage, and maybe you get out. But once you've decided you can't get out, it becomes true you should tap. And Derrick Lewis doesn't make that choice. If he's made it before, please forgive me. If he's made it in the past, then I would say Derrick Lewis almost never makes that choice. And he certainly didn't make it on that night. Again, now we're at many, many minutes of me saying this over and over again. Why? Because this matters. It's so rare. It's so rare. You know? If you do subscribe to DAZN, there's some chat with me and Chael Sonnen about this. It's so rare. The best of the best of the best of the best can only push themselves so far. Derrick Lewis can go further. So why does that matter? Now we talk about Daniel Cormier as a separate entity before maybe we try to find how these two things meet. Well, Cormier, from a comparison standpoint, the standard ways we look at things, if you just side-by-sided things, who's better and by how much? Get Daniel Cormier to sprint, he'll sprint faster. Get him to, do 100 wrestling takedowns, he'll get 100 of them done before Derrick's done 17. And all of his will be smoother and nicer and more efficient and more powerful and more dangerous and harder to stop. Get Daniel Cormier to put together the smartest slipping and striking, not getting hit. He can do that in a way the naked eye can look and go, that's better than that. Every single category from which we make comparisons, Daniel Cormier will win that category, with the exceptions of size and then power, which we have discussed is not a real thing. Power is created. Power is created through and the use of force, size, and mechanical efficiency expressed through technique in a way that harnesses energy to do damage. And I've used this example many times, but Francis Ngannou was punching the thing that measures force, and it had the highest ever until Joe Rogan threw a turning sidekick. So does Joe Rogan have more power than Francis Ngannou? Does he? According to this, he does. So what we usually try to do when we are hit with a conundrum like this is we try to, rather than surrender our improper analysis or our improper connection to it, we try to find new layers to keep it. So it's like, and we see this in politics and religion and all of the most debated things that are for often many of us uncomfortable. But we'll see it here too. We'll say, well, Joe Rogan kicked this substantially harder than Francis Ngannou. Now, some people will be like, well, then I guess Joe Rogan has more power. Cheers to you, Joe Rogan. The dude's got a lot of power. I've analyzed his game, his martial arts. He's a wonderful martial artist. But does he have more power than Francis? Now, if we don't surrender our improper connection to this concept and we just seek to explain it, we'll say, well, Mark, this what we'll do, right? Like, bear with me right here. Francis Ngannou has more power with his punch, but Joe has more power with his kick. Oh, fuck. Now we've fucking doubled down on stupidity. We're wrong. There is no power. Power is not, nobody has power. Power is created through this combination of skills and tactics and techniques and body and all these things. So now we'll have to compare Francis's kick to Joe's kick. Then we'll go, well, Joe has more power in his turning sidekick than Francis. Then we'll be like, yeah, but Francis isn't as good at a turning sidekick. Well, what if he was better? He'd have more power. Boom, we found a flaw. Talent, technique, training. Francis doesn't have more power than Joe. Joe doesn't have more power than Francis. Joe's better at this thing. Overcomes the obvious, powerful body. Now, well, we can keep explaining it, or we can surrender that and go, okay, wait a second, what's actually happening? And what else are we missing? And why can Francis or Derrick Lewis punch harder in round 1 than 3, but then this punch was so powerful? Desire, commitment. And commitment, when you take a big, powerful guy and you've taught him how to punch, and you have him throw a punch so hard that it's the type of punch that he would fall down. Why would he fall down? Because he just completely didn't edit himself in that punch. I don't know if that's the right word. Didn't limit himself, didn't what's the word where you didn't edit himself? Doesn't matter what the word is. Yeah, you're following me. Well, that was different. Well, now he's got crazy power. But what about his jab? It's not like that. So that's the one area. Can he at times hit harder than Daniel Cormier? He has at times. Dan's also hit harder than him at times. So we throw that one away. It's not real. It's very, very shallow first, it's not first principles thinking. It's all kinds of complex. So we throw that one away, and if we want to use our old way of comparison, Dan Cormier is better at everything. But Derrick Lewis, when has that desperate commitment to the fight, he can fight. Oh, wait, before we say that, Volkov was also better at everything. Everything. Volkov was better, moved better, smoother, stronger, sharper, technically more better, reach, everything but weight, and even his weight was pretty high too. And if you doubt me, then let's look at 2 minutes and 49 seconds and just judge that and say, on this night, this guy was better. Yeah, well, Derrick Lewis fucking made that not true, right? The outcome of that fight was Derrick Lewis knocked that guy out. And it was wonderful and beautiful, and I was so thrilled to see it, and it was so cool, and it just reminded you of one of the myriad of things that makes fighting so cool. But could he do that again? Of course he could, as long as he believes it. Now, minute 21 is harder, but Mark just told you that he knocked a guy out in the 4th round before. I think he was on top of him, but it's irrelevant. He was on top with this guy when he finally ultimately finished him. That's real. That's real. And there's a certain amount, when somebody hands you the chance to do something, most of us would do our best, but it's almost impossible. Now I'm going to throw one thought out here. Maybe this will get repeated out of context, but that's okay. That's part of the game now. I find when you do, Chael is a very good friend. When he says something crazy, I watch all his fucking things grow and more people watch him. It's a weird world we're living in. But Daniel Cormier is better at every aspect of martial arts as an independent. Daniel Cormier is better at each independent area of martial arts than Derrick Lewis, at least as much as Floyd Mayweather was better at boxing than Conor McGregor. He is.
That's fair.
It's fair. If you want to argue that point rather than examine its meaning, knock yourself out. But if we start simply, and these are the building blocks, and I use this as another way to look at different aspects of it. Truthfully, these building blocks are not as important as they once were because of the way that the whole game is blended and expressed. But when Derrick Lewis kind of wrestles a bit for 5 years or 7 years or as long as he's been doing it, says he doesn't like it, kind of trains an hour a day, in the drop of a bucket compared to Daniel Cormier, who was an Olympic elite of the elite 10 years ago.
Whose motto is embrace the grind.
His motto is embrace the grind. Tell me, please, honestly, is Daniel Cormier more or less better than Derrick Lewis than Floyd Mayweather was over Conor McGregor? I mean, at least as much, probably more. The space between Derrick Lewis and Daniel Cormier in the game of wrestling as by itself is larger than the space between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. We could say the same thing about just the art of kickboxing. I would also say that. About athleticism. As somebody who has been an Olympic caliber athlete and has been a driven athlete his entire life against Derrick Lewis, who says he doesn't really like to work that hard. And all of these areas are that big between them. And I still truly, truly think it's a beautiful fight. I do. I really do. And I'm thrilled that I think that. It makes me happy to think that. It makes me happy to think that I think that. Because it can be done. It absolutely can be done. Truthfully, would you really be... would it be like, oh my God, it was impossible. I never thought I thought it was a 0% chance if Derrick Lewis knocked out Daniel Cormier somehow, knocked him down sort of and got on top of him, hit him a few times. Would you be like, I just thought the possibility was 0? No. You didn't see it. If I asked you to make a pick or bet your money, you wouldn't have bet it. But you know it's possible. You know it. You saw it fucking, 5, 6, 7 days ago? You know it.
It's like the same thing in poker, you know, when they used to show poker a lot here in Toronto on TV and whatnot, and you know the two guys would face off, and there's a 2% chance that guy would hit.
Yeah.
The 2% chance is still out there.
Yeah.
So don't be.
You need a two of spades to come
if the
up.
guy hits.
Exactly.
There's still a 2% chance.
And what they call it a bad. So Mark's example, they call it a bad beat in poker. When the percentage chance that I get the only card in the whole deck that would actually give me the thing comes up, it's a bad beat. And people will often say, well, you should never have made that bet. Mm-hmm. Fucking rights I should. I want to look at all my stack of chips. Of course I should have made it. Yeah, but statistically speaking, well, yeah, you're right, statistically speaking. And that's what's happening.
I had a 2% chance.
Yeah, exactly. And that's 1 out of 50 times. Fucking roll a dice that goes from 1 to 100. You have a chance of a 23 or a 24 coming up, you win and everything else. Well, fuck, sometimes it does. And what I love about this fight is it is possible. What I love about this fight is it'll also create a lot of tension in Cormier. He needs to overcome that. The weirdness of it and the man, if I lose to this guy, and not in a critical way of Derrick Lewis, just in this is a fight I'm supposed to win every day of the week. Well, that's hard. It's a hard thing. It's a hard truth. You have to admit it. It's floating around in there somewhere. You have to admit it, deal with it, and figure out how you're going to approach it knowing that's true. So it's a cool fight. Plus, how can you not kind of like Derrick Lewis? Wasn't a big fan when he started talking shit about Travis Brown that time, saying they beat women when the accuser came back and said that was not true, and I apologize. There's a rare occasion. A lot of occasions, people who do a bad thing did that bad thing. There's rare occasions where they didn't. And when you propagate that... Anyways, that's unrelated. He's just a person doing his best. That's all any of us are doing. And sometimes we get it wrong.
It's a feel-good story for MMA.
For Derrick
Lewis.
Yeah.
Because, for one, just his personality type, he's not a big fight fan. He doesn't know much about the UFC fighters. He's a big soccer fan and loves NASCAR.
Yeah. And he's a big, strong guy with a lot of guts and I think a comparison to him, too, is Roy Nelson. Yep. Not just because they're both kind of not shaped like athletes, but they're both kind of off the beaten track kind of guys. And you can connect to them. Now, I can't because of how big they are. I don't know what that's like. Those of us that are in the 5'6" range don't know what that's like. But it's cool. You'll cheer for him, and Dan has to deal with that too. He has to understand that too. That matters. The feeling shouldn't matter. Doesn't have to matter if you deal with it, but it can matter. Is the view from the audience of you and this guy, and what happens when he hits you one time and they all cheer, and like you face that a lot in your life, but the meaning is different. He's got to prepare for all of that, and as a result, it's a really cool fight. Every single matchup in its own way gives you something. Every single one. And so often people are like, I hate this one. Why'd they make this? And then it's wonderful. And even if Dan beats this guy up and finishes him, and after people go, well, obviously, Dan's way better. Yeah, but on this night, on a night, that man could do it. Can you imagine Derrick Lewis, UFC heavyweight champion? Derrick Lewis.
The Black Beast.
The Black Beast, UFC heavyweight champion. We'd be thrilled for him. And hopefully, he's talked about, Mark and I were talking about before we rolled the camera. He's talked about walking away from the game. It's hard. It sucks. There's a lot of things about it you don't
issues.
Like. Yeah. And
his back, he's been complaining about his back for a very long time.
He's got body pain. And every time that dude won that fight, he should be proud of it. I'm sure he is. As we're recording this, it's 5 and 6 days later. He's still in a lot of pain. And for a lot of people that have never really taken a beating in a professional fight, 3 and 4 days later are like walking, sitting, talking, and it's easier when you win, for sure, but it's still painful. So he's been through that a lot of times. And even when you won in the first round, sometimes you've blown something out through exertion. You're exerting so hard. So, if he were to win or lose, if I'm him, I'm like, I'm the UFC heavyweight champion. Peace. Mm-hmm. But that's in no way is me giving advice to an incredibly high level athlete about what he should do. I'm just saying what I would do, but he should do what's good for him. But ultimately, brilliant, one of the greatest light heavyweights and heavyweights of all time, arguably the greatest, against a man with a dream who has an unstoppable will. That's cool, and it's rare. And he also has Dan will be 238 or something when he walks in there, but he's really, the other guy will be 270, 280, 290 by fight time. He cuts a lot of weight. Could have 50 pounds on him. So heart, desire, that ferocious will to win, which, to be honest with you, Dan also has, as rare as that is. Yeah. Dan has it on whatever level, as incredibly rare as it is. But when you shut a man off, the way to overcome that will is to shut him off or to choke him out. So one of those guys will do it. Of course, it's most likely Dan, but it should be this a cool fight.
And Dan has experience breaking people. Yeah. Like that's a part of his skill set. Just grinding out till you just break. So,
yeah, and when somebody is very unbreakable like this, the goal, if you can break them, if you can make them say no mas, that's something pretty great. And you're looking for your own challenges to overcome in fights. So we'll talk about this fight again, I believe, before we've got a few weeks. But I hope people enjoy it. I hope they enjoy it for what it is. And I won't cheer against you, Dan Cormier, because I am an eternal fan of yours. But I certainly won't cheer against you either, Derrick Lewis. I hope you have the night of your life.